The FLEX 24-volt grinder, 10,000 RPMs and multiple speeds. Is this something you need in your shop? We'll find out in a moment. I'm Tim Johnson. You're watching Shop Tool Reviews. As I just mentioned, this is the FLEX 24-volt, model number FX3171A, and it is their 4.5 and 5-inch angle grinder. Now it runs on their 24-volt platform, has their new sensorless or sensor-free brushless motor. We'll explain that in a moment. And it can run up to 10,000 RPMs. But here's the key. It's got different speeds on it as well. Not something you typically see on a grinder. Let's dive into the features. Let's talk about the specs. Then we'll actually use this and we'll come back. We'll talk about price, about warranty, and what we think of it. This is the brand new FLEX 24-volt angle grinder, and it is a 4.5 and 5-inch angle grinder. So the guard on here will accept either 4.5-inch wheels or 5-inch wheels without having to change that guard, and it's rated to do so. Now this is my favorite of grinders, is a paddle switch grinder. I just like them. Some people like a slide lock, but this is the paddle switch. So you have a safety lock right here, flip that up, and then engage the paddle switch, and then it's going to be like an on-off. It's not a variable speed switch, which really is not needed on a grinder. A polisher, yes, but not on a grinder. So again, you've got that plunger switch in there under the paddle. And the reason I like a paddle is that I don't have to engage it with just a certain finger or certain couple of fingers. Wherever I'm grabbing this, even if I'm upside down with a thumb, what have you, I can easily get to that paddle wherever I am, whether I'm really low or whether I'm really high. Again, as long as I flip that safety switch, and then I can engage that paddle from anywhere on that paddle with the several fingers, one finger, what have you. That's why I like a paddle switch. Also, with your natural grip, you can keep that grinder activated and grinding away. But as soon as you let go or you drop it, what have you, then it's going to turn off. Also, you'll notice, number one, we have a 10,000 RPM max and no load speed, but also we have that electronic brake. So from high speed, 1001, 1002, about 2 seconds, that blade or that wheel is now stopped. So that electric brake is going to kick in as soon as you let off the button or let off the trigger. Now, one thing interesting on this grinder, which is different than most others, or really about any others if I'm not mistaken, in the cordless arena, is we have speeds on this. So you can see here with the plus and minus, we could set this at high speed, which is 10,000 RPMs. We can go down to 3, which is 7,000 RPMs, 5,000 RPMs on speed 2, and speed 1 is just 3,000 RPMs. So, you know, whether you might be grinding on some aluminum or maybe some stainless, something like that, and you want that slower speed, well, you don't have to vary that with a throttle or with a trigger. You can do that by setting that to low speed and being able to do your fine grinding, fine sanding, or whatever you need to do. Now this is kitted with a 5 amp hour battery, but you can run the 8 or the 12 on here as well. Also, you'll notice here on the bottom are stainless mesh screens, filters if you will. So once you pull these off, you'll see the ports here. Now this is where it ingests the cool air. So the cool air is going to enter in here. And so it's very important that we're filtering that air, screening that air, especially when you've got metal particulate flying all around. So you can take that out, blow it out, wash it out, what have you. And that air is entering here. It's flowing all the way down this handle, cooling all the electronics, and then exiting here out the top of the grinder. So again, very important to keep those screens nice and clean, and it's important to have those screens on there for a professional style grinder. Now on the handle here we have kind of some anti-flex technology. I'm not sure how critical that is on a cordless grinder, but hey, it's great to have. And the reason I say that is typically on a cordless grinder, you're doing smaller jobs. You're not grinding all day long. For that matter, then absolutely that anti-vibration handle would be a great help. But again, not going to knock them for adding a feature to this that, hey, maybe someone really likes it. The rubber overmolding on this is very nice on the FLEX tools. I really like it. It's kind of got an aggressive feel to it, but yet it's not uncomfortable to the hand. Again, not a big deal on a grinder. Typically you're doing heavy, harsh work. You're not really caring about ergonomics and how it feels, other than it needs to fit pretty well and actually be able to hold on to it, and it does that very good. Something very different in the new Flex 24 volt tools are the brushless motors because they're sensor free. Now that's kind of, that needs to be understood because all brushless motors need sensors, but what they've done is they've removed them from the actual motor itself and moved them elsewhere in the tool so that they can make the motor smaller and get more power out of the space they have available. So again, they're saying sensor free, meaning it's not actually on the motor. They've been able to put the sensors remote, if you will, to then be able to slim down that actual brushless motor. And on the blade guard here, so let me go ahead and here's our arbor lock. Take this off. Typical spanner, and by the way, you get a spanner wrench as well. But as far as the blade guard, we don't have any tools that are needed for doing this, nor is there any levers on here either. All you have to do is spin it around and index that where you need it. So really cool that no tools needed, nor any levers to push either. So you can also spin it around to this side and pull it right off to remove it if you need to. But really cool feature there with no tools or levers needed to push to turn that blade guard. And as I mentioned, we can run a 4.5 inch wheel on here. Here, let me put my, there we go. We can run a 4.5 inch wheel on here, or we can run a 5 inch wheel on here as well, even with that same blade guard. Well, before we use it, let's get some weights and measurements. Not that it's really critical here on a grinder to know the weights and measurements, but we'll go ahead and do so. Bring our scale over here, and we'll go ahead and weigh this with the 5 amp hour battery with a blade on it, with a cutting blade on it, just to get an idea. And you're looking at 6 pounds 8 ounces, so 6.5 pounds for the grinder with the 5 amp hour battery. So if you're going up to the 8, it's going to be a little bit more. If you're down to the 2.5, be a little less. But typically on this grinder, you're going to have some type of a high capacity battery. So I would recommend at least the 5 amp hour because it just draws a ton of current when you're grinding. But again, 6.5 pounds for that. Now, tip to tail, as far as a measurement on this, you're looking at, from the head to the tip of the battery, you're about 15 inches long. Now, again, not super critical, but there are some grinders that just seem like they're a mile long, and this one's not bad at all. Also, with the 5 amp hour battery, it is pretty balanced. So right here about mid-tool is the balance point there with that 5 amp hour battery, and I do think that is important in a cordless grinder. Also, as far as the geometry of the battery, it's nice and balanced as well. You can see when I'm surface grinding, I'm not hitting the battery on something, as well as we don't have something sticking way up here either. So nice job on getting that tool kind of balanced out. And finally, before we use this, let's talk a little bit about battery technology. Now, Flex has not been in the game for just a short time. They've been around a long time, as well as the mother company has been making batteries and chargers for quite some time. One thing really nice about these new 24 volt batteries is I can push the button here, and it's very easy to see what the state of charge is on this. Also, their chargers are built really well. They charge really fast as well. And you'll see here we have some ports here in the battery. And by the way, I cover this in a review on its own of the batteries and chargers, but when I plug this in, it may recognize that it's fully charged. It probably will, yeah. So it goes automatically to double green. But if this battery needed charging, you would hear the fan kick on. In fact, you'd hear 2 fans kick on that's cooling this battery as well as the charger while it's charging this battery. Very fast charges as well. We'll put a link in the description for the battery and charger video that talks about their technology. So really great batteries and chargers from Flex that are going to work really well on their Flex 24 volt tools. Now let's go use this. Now, one thing about this Flex grinder is this is not the first time we used it whatsoever. In fact, I've even cleaned up the guard on it so it was somewhat acceptable. But we've been using this in the shop, and the reason is when it comes to a grinder that's a very high load tool, in other words, it really has to put down the power. It's going to get hot. I don't like to kind of give my stamp, if you will, on a single use or using it 4 or 5 times. I really want to get a good feel for the grinder. So what you're seeing here are just some things that we've seen around the shop and some things that we really believe in on this Flex grinder. So something very easy. So some 5/8 rebar, something pretty typical for a cut. I've got a 4.5 inch Type 27 cutting wheel on here, and we'll just first we'll turn the speed up. So we'll go to high. So even pushing hard on it, it bogged a little bit when I really laid some pressure on it, but cut through rather easily, again, even with some pressure applied to that blade. Now something like tubing, 1-inch square tubing, 2-inch square tubing, 1x2, something typical around the shop, angle iron. So again, not bad there either, being able to quickly cut through that 1-inch tube. And then something like a 1/4-inch flat bar, something pretty typical in a fab shop that you just got. Again, I'm really trying to push through there to really get that cut to go through like you're trying to get it done fast, which is pretty typical. And again, not really getting any bog out of it. I am able to slow it down a little, but it's definitely got the power to stay through the cut. So cutting through that 2-inch wide, 1/4-inch thick steel flat bar. Now we'll put a typical grinding wheel on here. Index or guard. And then we've got a piece of, I know that's more than 1/4, so a little more than 1/4 piece of C-channel. And we'll put a nice bevel on this and see how well it does. So I think it's a Metabo wheel, so it's a good grinding wheel. So let's see if we can't put a bevel on here. So no problem at all, even putting a large bevel on some thick steel, on some construction steel. So as far as a cordless grinder, the Flex is very impressive. It really is. The battery technology, I love it. I love the easy indicator to be able to see how much power is left in that battery, how much juice or how much capacity is left. And then something typical like surface prep as well. Throw a 5-inch wheel on here. And then something as easy as cleaning up some surface. No problem at all. So I believe that's a 40 grit flap disc. Same thing on the surface prep. So not only has the power to do all the jobs you need to do in the shop, whether it be grinding bevels, or cutting, what have you, it definitely has the power to do it. Also like the features, I love the electronic brake on it where Once I let go of that trigger, within a couple of seconds, that wheel has come to a complete stop. Let's first talk about cordless grinders in general. I get asked all the time, Tim, what kind of cordless grinder should I buy? And my answer is, what are you using it for? And here's my reasoning. Cordless grinders are not replacing corded grinders yet. They're just not there yet. We're not there on runtime, and we're a little bit short on power. We're getting closer on power, but runtime is still a problem no matter what size battery you put on that. And that's not against Flex or any other brand name, because quite frankly, if you're using a grinder all the time and you're using a big 13 amp corded grinder, you're not going to find a cordless replacement grinder that you're not going to be ticked at, meaning you're going to use it for a little bit and it's going to run out of power and you're going to be mad at us. Now, for small jobs or maybe punch list items where you're going in and you're either making a fix or you're needing to weld something, you're needing to put a bevel on some steel, it has the power to do that. We showed you that. We do that all the time here at the shop. We're rarely ever making a bunch of things, but we're typically always either fixing something or building small jigs, small frames, what have you. And we rarely ever use a corded grinder anymore. On top of that, this Flex has become our go-to grinder. It used to be a DeWalt, and now we've replaced it with this Flex 24 volt. So there's lots of power that Flex is able to put to the wheel with their new sensor-free brushless motor. We've been very impressed with that. We also love their battery technology. Not only does it last a while, but it also charges well and charges safely. So their chargers and their batteries work very well together. We did a complete review on just their batteries and chargers. Showing the technology they have in the battery as well as the chargers and the dual fan configuration in these chargers that keep the batteries cool. In fact, bring the temperature of the battery down while it's charging it. So they charge them fast, but they also charge them safely. Now let's talk about cost on this. You can get this as a bare tool for $179. Now that's probably not the best deal because you can get it with the 5 amp hour battery and with the charger and the tool for $249. And you get a 5-year warranty with that. Not just that, if you buy it in 2021, any of the Flex 24 volt tools, you can upgrade that 5-year warranty to a lifetime warranty on the tool and the battery. That's really hard to pass up. Now we really like the power from this. We also like the blade free. We like the tool-free adjustment on the blade guard, whether you're taking it off or whether you're just moving it around, and the fact that we can run a 5-inch wheel on here as well. And not only just run a 5-inch wheel on here, but that it has the power and the guts to actually move that. We also think it's a great idea with the speeds. We haven't used that a lot, but we can definitely see getting into more precious metals, if you will, like stainless aluminum and surface prep, that could come in very handy to slow that wheel down without having to actually throttle it. So make sure you check it out for yourselves. You can buy this at Lowe's or on Lowe's.com, and it's the FX3171A, and it's the Flex 24 volt, 4.5 and 5-inch angle grinder. Make sure you keep track of us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. If you don't mind, would you hit that like and subscribe button, but only if you liked our video. Also, you know it, if you didn't like our video, give us a thumbs down, but would you let us know in the comments why? Have a great day and keep smiling.